You've seen the images, the haunting, silent figures of Pompeii, frozen in their final moments. Men, women, children, their bodies contorted in what looks like unbearable agony. For generations, the story we've told ourselves is that they were slowly buried alive, choking on a relentless storm of volcanic ash. It's a powerful and tragic narrative. But what if that story, the one we all picture, isn't quite right? For many of those who remained in Pompeii and the nearby town of Herculaneum, death wasn't a slow suffocation. It was something far quicker and, frankly, more terrifying. Forensic evidence reveals a death so fast they likely never saw it coming. The truth isn't just written in plaster. It's baked into their very bones. To understand how they died, you first have to understand the eruption. For a long time, we thought it happened on August 24th, 79 AD. But modern archaeology points to a different season. Discoveries of autumn fruits, victims in heavier clothing, and a charcoal inscription dated to mid-October all suggest the disaster struck later in the fall. The debate is ongoing, but an autumn eruption is now widely favored. On that fateful day, Mount Vesuvius roared to life. But it didn't immediately flood the streets with lava. Instead, the first phase was a Plinian eruption, a colossal column of superheated gas, ash, and rock rocketing into the sky, estimated to have reached a height of over 30 kilometers. For those below, the sun vanished. Then, the fallout began. For hours, the city was pummeled by a hail of lightweight pumice stones and ash. This was destructive, but not always a death sentence. Many thousands likely escaped during these early hours. Those who died in this phase were often victims of collapsing roofs, crushed under the immense weight of the accumulating debris. But for those who stayed behind, a far more lethal threat was building on the volcano's slopes. After hours of this volcanic storm, the eruption's second and deadliest phase began. The massive column in the sky, unable to support its own weight, collapsed. This unleashed a series of what are known as pyroclastic density currents, terrifying, ground-hugging avalanches of superheated gas and volcanic matter. Forget any image of slow-moving lava. These weren't flows. They were surges, moving at hundreds of kilometers per hour. They were inescapable. One study suggests a lethal cloud may have taken as little as 15 to 20 minutes to sweep through and engulf the entire city. This was the event that claimed the lives of most of the remaining population, the people who, for whatever reason, had not fled Pompeii. So, what happened when one of these currents hit? The long-held theory was suffocation from ash, but modern science paints a different and more complex picture. For many victims, the primary cause of death appears to have been extreme heat. Volcanologists estimate that temperatures within these surges at Pompeii could have reached 250 to 300 degrees Celsius, about 570 degree F. Exposure to such intense heat, even for a moment, is instantly fatal from thermal shock. This brings us to those famous poses. The contorted, defensive postures of the plaster casts are not, as long believed, evidence of a prolonged struggle. Instead, they are the result of a post-mortem reaction known as the pugilistic stance. It's a horrifying, but purely physical, reflex. The extreme heat causes a corpse's muscles to violently contract after death, pulling the limbs into a flexed, crouched position. The victims weren't cowering in agony. Their bodies were reacting to the searing heat that had already killed them. However, the science is clear that in a disaster of this scale, death wasn't uniform. Studies on victims in certain areas suggest that asphyxiation from the fine ash and toxic gases may have been the cause, just before the full heat of the surge arrived. If the conditions at Pompeii were lethal, at the seaside town of Herculaneum, they were even more extreme. Being closer to Vesuvius, it was hit by hotter and more powerful pyroclastic currents. Here, temperatures may have surged to 400–500 degrees Celsius, up to 932 degree F. The evidence from Herculaneum is stark. The heat was so intense that some studies suggest it caused victims' blood to boil and their skulls to explode, a grim theory based on residue and fracture patterns found on the bones. In one of the most astonishing and macabre discoveries in archaeology, scientists found what appear to be the vitrified, or glass-like, remains of a victim's brain. The intense, rapid heating followed by quick cooling seems to have turned the man's brain tissue into a black, glassy material. While the precise mechanics are still debated by some experts, the discovery of preserved neuronal structures inside the material is a shocking testament to the unique and terrifying conditions of the eruption. This brings us back to the famous plaster casts. It's important to understand what they are. They are not the preserved bodies of the victims. When the pyroclastic surges buried Pompeii, the fine, hot ash packed around the bodies of the deceased. Over time, as this ash hardened, the soft tissues inside decomposed, leaving behind a hollow cavity, a perfect, detailed void in the shape of the person. It wasn't until the 1860s that the site's director, Giuseppe Fiorelli, developed an ingenious technique. When excavators found one of these cavities, they would carefully pour liquid plaster into it. Once the plaster set, they would chip away the surrounding hardened ash, revealing a plaster replica of the victim. The person's skeletal remains are sometimes still encased within the plaster. So the casts aren't the bodies, but an incredibly precise snapshot of their final form. For over a century, these casts were interpreted through our own assumptions. But today, CT scans and ancient DNA analysis are letting us see inside the plaster and rewrite their stories. One of the most famous casts, known for decades as the Two Maidens, shows two figures in a poignant final embrace. They were long assumed to be women seeking comfort, but DNA analysis of the remains inside told a different story. Both individuals were male, and they were not related. In another location, the House of the Golden Bracelet, a group of 4 bodies was believed to be a family. One figure, wearing a beautiful golden bracelet and holding a child, was assumed to be the mother. Recent DNA analysis shattered this image. The study revealed that the adult wearing the bracelet was male, and that none of the 4 individuals found in the house were genetically related to each other. These discoveries challenge our most basic assumptions about who these people were. So, how did the people of Pompeii actually die? The familiar image of a slow, drawn-out death by suffocation is, for many, a myth. The reality was a far more violent and far more rapid end. Many were killed in seconds by an unstoppable, superheated cloud of gas and ash, dying from overwhelming thermal shock. Others were suffocated by toxic gas, and still others were crushed by falling debris in the eruption's first hours. Pompeii is more than just a ruin. It is a forensic site of immense importance. The victims are not just statues. They are individuals whose stories are still being told through cutting-edge science. If you find this forensic look into the past as fascinating as we do, make sure you subscribe to join us for our next investigation. The victims of Pompeii are a permanent, humbling reminder of the terrifying power of nature and of the human stories that can remain hidden, just waiting for the right tools to bring them back into the light.